Nitai Gaur Hari Om. Hari Om Nitai Gaur. Srila Prabhupada ki Gaur Premanandi. Is the image showing? Okay. This is largely visual. And if you can't see the screen, you're missing a lot. So you may have to sit somewhere else. Can you see? If you can't see, we can get a mirror. You can look in the mirror and see the screen in the mirror. During this particular visit, the topic has been Krishna Leela. Nice topic. Unlimited topic. And we've been covering one chapter at a time. And so far, we covered through chapter 66. A little summary on chapter 66 because it leads into chapter 67. Chapter 65 was Balaram visits Vrindavan. He was very much feeling separation and affection for all the residents of Vrindavan, knowing their loving feelings for Krishna. And he had a discussion with Krishna about together visiting, and at least what it says in the 10th canto, chapter 64, 65, was he didn't go because the elders, particularly Vasudeva and Devaki and the other elders, thought, we know how much Krishna loves the residents of Vrindavan, and if he goes to Vrindavan, maybe he won't come back. So in different pretexts, they decided he shouldn't go. There's other reasons we discussed, but Krishna didn't go. Instead, Krishna gave very detailed messages for specific people by name to be delivered by Balaram to those devotees. It doesn't say the contents of those messages, but that they're customized, person by person by person. So Balaram went. He visited first the elder, first Nanda and Jasoda, then the other elders of Vraja, and appropriate exchanges with each of them. Then his friends, the cowherd boys, are now grown up, but they were his cowherd boyfriends. It says specifically that they didn't go and herd the cows because he was too much missing Krishna. He couldn't imagine herding the cows without Krishna, so he didn't. Then he met with Krishna's gopis, and then he had exchanges at Krishna's request with the younger gopis, kind of a different set of gopis. And for 2 months, every evening was a full moon, and he had rasa dance. Varuna made a special arrangement because he knew he liked Varuni beverage. In a tree, the fragrance was coming, and he drank and he became as if intoxicated, dancing and dancing, and then he wanted to enter the Jamuna River. He called her to come. She thought, this man is inebriated, I'm not coming. Balaram became angry, started dragging the river Jamuna, threatening to break her into little rivulets. She came forward and offered beautiful prayers. Krishna and the gopis entered into the river Jamuna. They bathed, and this went on for some time during his stay. He eventually returned to Vrindavan. Krishna inquired all about the well-being of everyone. And it says, confidentially, he went with him to a separate place to discuss about the gopis with whom he had danced. And that was the end of the chapter. Then the next chapter was, while those 2 months passed that Balaram was in Vrindavan, something else happened in Dwarka. The something else that happened in Dwarka was Krishna received a message from Pondraka, who hilariously sent a messenger to Dwarka, instructing Krishna to stop pretending to be him. I am Vasudeva, etc., 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 etc. So give up these symbols of Vishnu to me, or you're in for a big fight with me. So Ugrasena and the assembly, in the Sudharma assembly hall, they just laughed and laughed and laughed. Krishna was enjoying their laughter. He gave a message back to the messenger to deliver to Pondraka. Insulting words. You don't have to come to me, I'll come to you and finish you. My very weapons, you want my weapons, you'll get my weapons. They'll finish you. And so forth. So the messenger went back, delivered the message to Pondraka, whose face became pale when he heard. Immediately Krishna arranged for travel with his whole army to the city of Pondraka. Karusha was the name of his capital, and the capital of Pondraka just happened to be very, very close to Kashi. Pondraka had a dear friend, an ally, the king of Kashi. The king of Kashi, hearing that Krishna had come, said to his citizens inside his capital, I'll bring back the head of Krishna, and you can see who is powerful. So in bold words, he went off to battle. Pondraka and Kashi with their 2 armies, 3 Akshohini divisions each, and started a big battle with Krishna and his army. So after Krishna made quick business finishing Pondraka's army, he became enraged, and he turned his attention from the soldiers he was fighting directly to Krishna, started attacking Krishna. The fight didn't last too long. He lost his head. His head was severed by the Sudarshan chakra of Krishna, and he lay on the battlefield dead. Kashi, similarly, Krishna knew that he had made this vow, so Krishna severed his head with his Sudarshan chakra, and the head went flying over the city wall in Kashi and landed in front of his palace. And everyone was, what's that? It's a head, but whose head is it? And looking closely, they saw it was their king's head. So Dakshina, his eldest son, performed the funeral and made a vow that he would kill the one who killed his father. And that's Krishna. So he began worshiping a certain deity that's, according to Prabhupada's Krishna book, still to this day is worshipped in Kashi, where thousands of pilgrims come to worship this deity of Lord Shiva in Kashi every day. And he worshipped and worshipped and worshipped in very intense austerities and worship. And eventually, Lord Shiva came before him and offered the benediction, whatever benediction you like. And Kashi's request was a means to kill the one who killed my father. That was what he wanted. So Lord Shiva tricked him. Lord Shiva said, you go do this particular black magic with the priests, these mantras, etc., and all you have to do is find someone who's not favorable to Brahminical culture, and the fiery demon that comes from the yajna by black magic will be able to kill the person who you've designated. So off he went, and Dakshinagni, fire demon, rose out of the fire. He pointed in the direction of Dwaraka. Go get him, Krishna. He came to Krishna, the resident, all the way from Kashi to Dwaraka, the whole land in all directions was burned to ashes. The people of Dwaraka were very afraid. Krishna said, no worry, I'll deal with this. And very quickly he made short of the demon. The demon retreated and returned back to Sudakshina and burned Sudakshina to ashes. Because black magic, if it doesn't hit or be successful in the aim, the intention of the black magic, it comes back to the person who invoked the black magic and destroys them. So that's what happened. And Sudarshan Chakra also went and completely burned the whole city of Kashi. That's the end of that chapter. So now comes chapter 67, where Shukadeva Goswami has been narrating this, and Maharaj Parikshit is eager to hear more about Balaram. So that's Balaram slaying the Dvivida gorilla. You guys see the screen, because there's lots of nice images that make a big difference between just hearing a story and connecting with visuals. So the chapter begins. I wish to hear further about Sri Balaram, the unlimited and immeasurable Supreme Lord, whose activities are all astounding. What else did he do? Going back the prior chapter, or chapter before this prior one. Commentary says, previously, Parikshit had heard about Balaram pulling the Jamuna with his plow. That was chapter 65. In the midst of discussing Balaram's pastimes, the killing of Paundraka was related. That was the next chapter. Since this happened when Balaram was in Braja, Parikshit now requested, tell me of Balaram's other activities, since he is full of powers. Shukadeva Goswami likes discussing topics of Krishna. There was an ape named Dvivida, who was a friend of Narakasura's. This powerful Dvivida, the brother of Minda, had been instructed by King Sugriva, right in this 67th chapter. King Sugriva. King Sugriva was the king during Ram's Leela. So we're going to hear a little bit about his background. To avenge the death of his friend Naraka, which was chapter 59, the ape Dvivida intended to destroy Lord Krishna's flourishing kingdom. He ravaged the nearby land, setting fires that burned cities, villages, mines, and cowherd dwellings. So who is this Dvivida? We're going to hear a little description. Previously, Dvivida and his brother Minda, who were sons of the Ashvini Kumaras, were ministers of the great devotee Sugriva, Dvivida and Minda. And there we see them. They're crossing the ocean with Ram and Lakshman. Those two big personalities pictured there. Associates of Ramachandra. He was with Hanuman and Angada's group who went south in search of Sita. So when the Vanaras were split into 4 groups in 4 different directions, their names are mentioned specifically in the Kishkinda section of the Ramayana. Both Minda and Dvivida. Dvivida is likewise mentioned many times during the battle in Lanka. So here's one particular reference when they were discussing who could jump, which Vanaras could jump all the way from the tip of India to Lanka. In that section, after hearing what Angada said, the foremost of all those monkeys began declaring their jumping ability one after another. Gaja said, I can jump 80 miles. Gavaksha said, I can jump 160 miles. Some further persons. Thereafter, Minda said, I am capable of jumping 480 miles. The powerful Dvivida declared, I can undoubtedly jump 560 miles. Kishkinda Kanda. So you're probably wondering, how did he become corrupted? Dvivida is also mentioned along with other demon associates of Kamsa. Canto 10, chapter 2, the very first 2 verses. This is chapter 2. It largely is the prayers of the demigods to Krishna within the womb of Devaki. That's chapter 2. But the very first 2 verses describe, under the protection of Magadharaja, Jarasandha, the powerful Kamsa began persecuting the kings of the Yadu dynasty. In this, he had the cooperation of demons like Pralamba, Baka, Chanura, Trinarvarta, Agasura, Mushtika, Arishta. There's his name. Dvivida. He was one of Kamsa's buddies. Putana, Keshi, Denuka, Banasura. This is very inauspicious, saying these names of demons. It's right in the 10th canto. Narakasura and many other demoniac kings on the surface of the earth. So how did he have so many demoniac kings under his power? It's really easy. He was so powerful that he went to this kingdom, that kingdom, the other kingdom, challenged the kings to battle. He defeated the kings until their entire armies were finished and just the king was left, and he gave him two choices. Either you serve me or I'll kill you. So some chose to be subservient to Kamsa because he was so powerful. He was so powerful. So they became subservient to him. And Dvivida didn't become subservient in that manner. We'll find out how he became subservient. How did Dvivida fall down? And the answer by our acharyas consistently is he made an offense to Lakshmana. Because he was so proud of his strength, he offended Lakshmana. And he has searched and searched, and I couldn't find exactly the manner in which he offended Lakshmana. So don't ask me what did he exactly do, because the answer is I don't know. But he offended Lakshmana. And so here's a little chart. You offend the Vaishnav, and then you become subjected to or vulnerable to unfavorable association. That's what happened with Dvivida. The unfavorable association for him was Narakasura. And then he became corrupted. So then his anartha capacities went over the top. And then he made further offenses to Vaishnavas. So that's the cycle that happens if you make an offense. It's not just like, I made an offense. There's other consequences too. Your spiritual strength becomes weakened. Spiritual strength provides some protection from bad association. So be careful. Be really careful. The Paundraka was pride. And now this is even more insidious. It's offense. Here's what Vishwanath Chakrabarti Thakur writes. Though Dvivida was a minister to the great devotee Sugriva and an associate of Lord Ramachandra, he had become corrupted by the bad association of Naraka, which caused anarthas to rise in him. This bad association was the reaction of an offense Dvivida had committed when he disrespected Lakshmana, due to being proud of his strength. Continues. The Minda and Dvivida mentioned here are actually, listen to this, the eternally liberated devotees addressed as attendant deities during the worship of Lord Ramachandra. The Lord arranged their degradation to show the evil of bad association that results from offending great personalities. Listen to this one. Thus, the fall down of Dvivida and Minda can be compared to that of Jai and Vijay. Now, how many times have you heard, like hundreds and hundreds and hundreds and hundreds, the Jai and Vijay situation is unique. It's not that each time Hiranyakashipu and Hiranyaksha come, that's the situation. It's Jai and Vijay making their appearance again this way. It's unique. It's unique. It's unique. But there's another unique. Eternally liberated devotees addressed as attendant deities during the worship of Lord Ramachandra. Here's what Jiva Goswami writes. Minda and Dvivida are two forms worshipped as avanara, or covered deities, who worship Rama as Nitya Siddhas, dwelling in the Lord's eternal abode in Vaikuntha. Shui. Some jivas who are endowed with some of the Shakti of eternal associates like Minda and Dvivida, and are called by the same name, help Rama or other avatars when they appear on earth. Got that part? these jivas can become corrupted. For example, Dvivida associated with Narakasura, who hated the Lord. Now, Narakasura similarly became corrupted. How did Narakasura become corrupted? Similar, some offense and bad association. It's a pattern. Don't make offense, because there's always bad association. Don't make offense. So, Narakasura hated the Lord. This occurs because the mortal jiva, Dvivida, was mixed with elements of the material world, although a jiva invested with some of the nitya siddha powers. So how does that work? So let's do this. I'm pausing so you can focus. Who are in the 10th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, there's glorification of the cowherd boys, and there's glorification of Mother Yasoda and Nanda. That glorification of Mother Yasoda and Nanda come after Mother Yasoda's experience of seeing within Krishna's mouth the whole cosmic manifestation and all of that, looking to see if he's eaten dirt. And she goes into a swoon, and verse after verse after verse, she just moves to different positions of, it can't be this, maybe it's that, it can't be that, maybe it's something else. And then she gets over it just by saying, whatever, he's my son, I have to feed him. And she just gets into being Mother Yasoda again. So Maharaj Parikshit interrupts this narration and says, how did she become Mother Yasoda? What great austerities did she's eternal. She doesn't become Mother Yasoda. She's Shakti. She's not Jiva. She's Shakti Tattva. But a very interesting section in that last part of that chapter is Shukadeva Goswami describes a partial manifestation of Nanda and Yasoda as Vasus. Who are Vasus? Vasus are powerful warrior-like personalities that are in the heavenly realm. Like Bhishma Dev was a Vasu, one of a number of Vasus. There's principal Vasus, he was one. So there's two, both husband and wife, who are partial expansions of Nanda and Yasoda. And their names? Who remembers their names? Huh? You have lots of answers to lots of questions. Do you know this one? Anybody remember? She's looking it up. I can't remember their names either, right at the moment. They were living in the heavenly realm. They had a desire to have children, to have Krishna as their son specifically. So they underwent long austerities. And Brahma came and said, very well, you can take birth on earth and become the mother and father of Krishna as Nanda and Yasoda. So those partial expansions of the eternal Nanda and Yasoda entered into the body of the eternal Nanda and Yasoda, who gave birth to Krishna. Or some version, foster father, foster mother, but gave birth to Krishna and served him in Braja for a long time. And when Krishna's pastimes were over, those two left the body of the eternal Nanda and Jasoda and returned to their position as Vasus. Say the names again. Dara and Drona. Right? Now you remember? I'm remembering. Drona and Dara. Drona and Dara. The very next chapter, he covers his tracks and says actually that they're eternal. Nanda Jasoda, they're eternal. But those they entered into the body of the eternal Nanda and Jasoda because they had a desire to have Krishna as their son. Drona and Dara. So like that, there are situations where there's partial expansions of eternal associates. Here's another one. We came across it in this 10th canto. Pradumna. Pradumna is an eternal associate of Krishna in Goloka Vrindavan, in Dwaraka portion of Goloka Vrindavan. And he's the original Cupid who has a partial expansion as Cupid or Kamadev. You with me? Kamadev made a boo-boo. He tested out his lust arrows with Lord Shiva. It was a bad idea. Lord Shiva, with his third eye, glanced angrily over Kamadev and burned his body into ashes. So as a result, that spirit soul had to go somewhere, and there was no place for that spirit soul to go. So that spirit soul, partial expansion, merged into the body of the original Pradumna. So when Pradumna took birth as the son of Krishna and Rukmini, was the original Pradumna and the partial expansion Pradumna. There's more to that narration. That's one of the earlier chapters in the 10th canto, chapter 55, the story of Pradumna. It's really nice to get the whole picture of Krishna's pastimes. So that's similar to what's being described here by Jiva Goswami, a partial expansion of the eternal associates of Lord Ramachandra, Mainda and Dvivida, partial expansions of them manifested in this realm. And those partial expansions, at least in the case of Dvivida, became corrupted because of Dvivida's offense to Lakshmana, and then bad association of Naraka, and he lost his well-being. The good news is he got liberated and returned to his original position. That's the end of the story, or the end of the chapter. Jiva Goswami continues, the Mainda and Dvivida mentioned in this verse are persons endowed with their Shakti, the Shakti of the eternal, perfected, Nityasiddha, Dvivida and Mainda. It's a very detailed science. You have to listen to the details of spiritual science carefully. Because they did not disrespect Lakshmana, like Jai and Vijay, they appeared as demons in order to show the result of committing offenses. Jiva Goswami's Vaishnava Toshani. Jiva Goswami's Vaishnava Toshani is the product of Sanatan Goswami's verse by verse by verse by verse commentary on the entire 10th canto, which he then entrusted to Jiva Goswami to edit. So Jiva Goswami edited and made commentary on his commentary. Jiva Goswami is quite prolific. So that's what Jiva Goswami's Vaishnav Toshani is. So now back to Dvivida. Once Dvivida tore up a number of mountains and used them to devastate all the neighboring kingdoms, especially the province of Anarta, not Anarta, but the province of Anarta, wherein dwelt his friend's killer, Lord Hari. So this is Krishna, and the Anarta province is very proximate to Dwarka. Now it doesn't exactly say how they combine Anarta and Dwarka, other than that presumably, although I couldn't find it's verified anywhere, Anarta province may perhaps have included the island of Dwarka. That's one way to have it work. But wherein Lord Hari dwelled. So he's trying to make a mess and agitate Lord Hari. Another time he entered the ocean and, with the strength of 10,000 elephants, churned up its waters with his arms and thus submerged the coastal regions. Powerful. The wicked ape tore down the trees in the hermitage of exalted sages and contaminated their sacrificial fires with his feces and urine. Bad guy. Just as a wasp imprisoned smaller insects, he arrogantly threw both men and women into caves in a mountain valley and sealed the cave shut with boulders. We heard about this previously, yesterday. Vishnu Purana speaks, Dvivida, taking a huge form at will, looted and destroyed all the crops in the kingdom by going around and smashing them. So in other words, this pastime is not only in the Bhagavatam. Other Puranas and other similar literatures describe it. Once, while Dvivida was thus engaged in harassing the neighboring kingdoms and polluting women of respectable families, he heard very sweet singing coming from Raivataka mountain. So he went there. Now we're going to hear some more about Raivataka mountain, but it's within the kingdom of Anarta, or the province of Anarta. There he saw Sri Balarama, the Lord of the Yadus, adorned with a garland of lotuses and appearing most attractive in every limb. He was singing amidst a crowd of young women, including Revati, his wife, and since he had drunk Varuni liquor, his eyes rolled as if he were intoxicated. His body shone brilliantly as he behaved like an elephant in rut. And I found something about it's often this term elephant in rut is used. So what does that mean? It means it's like when Kuvalyapita was attacking Krishna, he was an elephant in rut. It means when they become very sexually agitated, from the temples of the elephant comes some sappy liquid, kind of darkish in color, indicating they're like mad. In a lusty state, but in a fighting state. He behaved like an elephant in rut. There's a nice verse in Padyavali, one of the earlier verses in Padyavali. Some of you probably like Padyavali. And if you don't, start reading it and you'll start to like it. Rupa Goswami's a collection of many prayers, some composed by him, many composed by others that he liked, an anthology of favorite prayers. But towards the very beginning, when the topic of glorification of Krishna is introduced, it describes he whose limbs were smeared with a musk-like fragrance, like an elephant in rut. because it said that when this fragrance, that this liquidy substance that comes from the temples of the elephant to attract the female elephant, it happens to smell very fragrant like musk. So when Krishna killed Kuvalyapita, his arms, his limbs became smeared with that same fragrance. It's just poetry. It's very beautiful. Okay. The mischievous ape climbed a tree branch and then revealed his presence by shaking the trees and making the sound kila kila, which is a gorilla sound. I don't know how to replicate that one. But whatever gorillas do to get your attention, that's what he did. When Lord Baladev's consorts saw the ape's impudence, they began to laugh. They were, after all, young girls, were fond of joking, and prone to silliness. But Dvivida didn't like that at all. They were laughing at him. So what did he do? Even as Lord Balaram looked on, Dvivida insulted the girls, making odd gestures with his eyebrows, coming right in front of them and showing them his anus. That's the translation of the Bhagavatam. Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur comments, he ridiculed the ladies by walking in a funny way, moving his eyebrows, making odd gestures, standing directly in front of them, and urinating. He disrespected Balaram by not even glancing at him. He is trying to irritate Lord Balaram, and it worked. Angered, Lord Balaram, the best of fighters, hurled a rock at him. First it was a rock, not his club. And the commentary says it was a rock because of his previous bhakti. He was previously a great personality who has become corrupted. But the cunning ape dodged the rock and grabbed the Lord's pot of liquor. Further infuriating Lord Balaram by laughing and ridiculing him, wicked Dvivida then broke the pot and offended the Lord even more by pulling at the girl's clothing. Thus, the powerful ape, puffed up with false pride, continued to insult Sri Balaram. Big mistake. Big mistake. Look what happened to Rukmi. He ridiculed Krishna and he was finished. Just boom. Balaram, and he was finished. Lord Balaram saw the ape's rude behavior and thought of the disruptions he had created in the surrounding kingdoms. Thus the Lord angrily took up his club and his plow weapon, having decided to put his enemy to death. Mighty Dvivida also came forward to do battle. Uprooting a sal tree with one hand, he rushed toward Balaram and struck him on the head with the tree trunk. Ooh. But Lord Sankarshan remained as motionless as a mountain and simply grabbed the log as it fell upon his head. Then he struck Dvivida with his club, named Sunanda. Shukadev Goswami goes on. Struck on the skull by the Lord's club, Dvivida became brilliantly decorated by outpour of blood, like a mountain beautified by red oxide. Ignoring the wound, Dvivida uprooted another tree, stripped it of leaves by brute force, and struck the Lord again. Now enraged, Lord Balaram shattered the tree into hundreds of pieces, upon which Dvivida grabbed yet another tree and furiously hit the Lord again. This tree, too, the Lord smashed into hundreds of pieces. Notice up his left arm, he's holding a tree, smashing it to hundreds of pieces. Thus, fighting the Lord, who again and again demolished the trees he was attacked with, Dvivida kept on uprooting trees from all sides until the forest was left treeless. Then, the angry ape then released a rain of stones upon Lord Balaram, but the wielder of the club easily pulverized them all. Going to come to an end real soon. Dvivida, the most powerful of apes, now clenched his fists at the end of his palm tree-sized arms, came before Lord Balaram and beat his fists against the Lord's body. Finished. The furious Lord of the Yadus then threw aside his club and plow, and with his bare hands hammered a blow upon Dvivida's collarbone. The ape collapsed, vomiting blood. This is a BBT painting. From Gopal Champu. These two personalities, they're the narrators of Gopal Champu. Are you familiar? Anyone a little bit familiar with Gopal Champu? It's Jiva Goswami's astounding composition. And in that composition, what happens is Krishna has defeated Dantavakra, and fulfilling his promise, Krishna returns to Vrindavan. He enters Vrindavan wearing Brijvasi clothes, not his princely attire, and he spends 2 months. He's residing at the house of Nanda and Jasoda, or palace, and every morning, 2 disciples of Narada Muni, they're introduced, Snigdhakanta and Madhukanta, and they're empowered by Narada to see past, present, future. And they begin narrating, for everyone's pleasure, the pastimes of Krishna starting from his childhood. And every day, and every day, and at the end of the day, they retire and they come back the next morning, and it's just a retelling. It's like a Krishna book, a la Jiva Goswami, with details that they're really interesting. Many of the descriptions are directly from the verses of the Bhagavatam, and many are from others. So that's Gopal Champu. And these 2 fellows in this image here, that's when I make these presentations, that means that's Snigdhakanta and Madhukanta. They take turns. It's kind of like Love and Kush. They take turns. It's similar. Understanding that Dvivida was an associate of Rama, Balaram tolerated everything. When Dvivida showed impudence 1,000 times, Balaram killed him. Though he killed him, I think he was merciful, for he liberated him from various offenses. Now, liberated him from various offenses means, specifically, Dvivida achieved liberation. I've mentioned this several times. I don't mind mentioning it again. All the demons that were killed by Krishna, or Krishna's direct associates like Balaram, like Arjuna, like Bhima, so forth, they all achieved liberation of one kind or another. So it was kindness. It looked like, animosity, because who kills somebody unless there's animosity? But it was not. It was kindness and granted liberation, even to this bad person who's doing the things that we mentioned. When he fell, O tiger among the Kurus, Raivataka mountain shook, along with its cliffs and trees, like a wind-tossed boat at sea. So here's a little nice painting, yeah? Balaram with Dvivida stretched on the ground. Raivataka mountain What do we know about Raivataka Mountain? So I'll share a little bit about Raivataka Mountain. Raivataka Mountain is situated in the kingdom of King Raivata. King Raivata, during Balaram's pastimes, was the father of Revati. Another name of the king Raivata is Kukudmi. So let's go back in the chapters of the Bhagavatam. When Krishna, for the second time, ran from the battlefield, the second time was he was running from Jarasandha. He went way, 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 way up in the top of a very tall mountain, a mountain that doesn't, the heights of which doesn't exist anymore. Jarasandha thought they were afraid of him. He searched everywhere, couldn't find them, so he decided to set the mountain on fire. So what did Krishna and Balaram do? They jumped off the mountain. They arranged for a chariot to arrive mystically and whisk them away to Dwaraka. But on the way to Dwaraka, in that same chapter, was the marriage of Balaram and Revati. And Revati, let's do it again. Revati was the daughter of King Raivata, or King Kukudmi, same person. And the place where he ruled was the Raivata kingdom, and in the Raivata kingdom was the Raivataka mountain. So one of the yatras we conducted was to visit Dwaraka, and we visited Raivataka mountain, the place where where Balaram married Revati. So this is the very same place, which is very near to Dwaraka, where Dvivida was killed, and when he fell, the whole Raivataka mountain was shaken, etc., etc. And it's in the kingdom of Raivata, which is part of the Anarta province. It takes a while to get all these names. It's like confusing. But if you hear it again and again and again, the puzzle pieces start to fit. Oh, okay, that's that, and that fits with that. In the heavens, the demigods, perfect mystics, and great sages cried out, "Victory to you! Obeisances to you, excellent, well done!" and showered flowers upon the Lord, having thus killed Dvivida, who had disturbed the whole world. The Supreme Lord freed the people imprisoned by Dvivida in the valleys and caves, remember? And returned to his capital as the people along the way chanted his glories. So now on the topic of liberation, here's something from Canto 2, Chapter 7, verse 34 through 35. Translation straight from the Bhagavatam. This is Prabhupada's translation. All demoniac personalities like, long list, Pralamba, Denuka, Baka, Keshi, Arishta, Chanura, Mushtika, Kuvalyapida, elephant, Kamsa, Yavana, Narakasura, and Pondraka. Great marshals like Shalva, Dvivida, monkey, and Balvala, Dantavakra, the seven bulls, Shambhara, Vidurata, and Rukmi, as also great warriors like Kamboja, Matsyakura, Srinjaya, Kekaya, would all fight vigorously either with Lord Hari directly or with him under his names as Baladev, Arjuna, Bhima, etc. And the demons, being thus killed, would attain either impersonal Brahmajyoti or his personal abode in the Vaikuntha planets. We heard when Pondraka was killed that he achieved Sarupya, forearm form, like Lord Vishnu, because he was just meditating on the four-armed form of Lord Vishnu, foolishly thinking that's me. But he was absorbed in thought of that form of the Lord. So that's the liberation that he achieved. Here's Balabhadra Stotra Kavacha, text number 7, where Dvivida's name is mentioned. May Lord Balaram, who is the enemy of Dhenukasura, always protect me from lust. May Lord Balaram, who killed Dvivida, always protect me from anger. May Lord Balaram, who is the enemy of Balvala, always protect me from greed. May Lord Balaram, who is the enemy of Jarasandha, always protect me from illusion. So here's Lord Balaram in his deity form in Krishna Balaram Mandir. Here he is with Krishna Balaram. So Maharaj Parikshit wanted to hear more about the wonderful activities of Lord Balaram. So fortunately he asked that question because that gave us the chance to hear. The whole of the Puranas are resting upon that same format, question-answer format, and it requires the qualified person to ask from, but also the qualified person to ask, because there are many, many, many places throughout the whole of the Bhagavatam where the Bhagavatam could have ended right there. But fortunately, Shaunak Rishi and Maharaj Parikshit, etc., continued to ask nice questions, and the flow kept continuing. And it is said that the Bhagavatam and our Srimad Bhagavatam is 18,000 verses, but there's a much larger version in the heavenly realm. So maybe we'll go to heaven and hear the larger version, or we just continue to associate with our great acharyas who disclose pastimes of Krishna that aren't even in the pages of the Bhagavatam. So what about that? What about pastimes of Krishna that aren't even in the pages of the Bhagavatam? What about that? Do we place them in a position that's kind of, the Bhagavatam is up here and those other narrations, they're somewhere lesser than the Bhagavatam? We don't do that because they're the explicit realizations of our great acharyas that are non-different than the realizations of Vyas. After all, realizations of Vyas is what we have in Srimad Bhagavatam. Correct? That's what Bhagavatam is. Narada instructed him two things: glorify the personality of Godhead, and the basis for that, sit in trance of meditation, and what you envision, that's your glorification. And that's what Bhagavatam is. It's Vyasadev's realization. Now he's super qualified. He's an incarnation of the personality of Godhead. And some of our great acharyas, they're eternal associates of Krishna to assist Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu in his pastimes, part of which is revealing pastimes. And in their state of mature realization, they express. And we take them as being non-different. Bhaktivinoda Thakur expresses like this: when there are teachings that are in the line of the scriptural teachings and expressed through members of disciplic succession who are perfectly realized souls, they're accepted as good. We accept them as good. Here's a nice example. Anyone here from a Sri Vaishnava background? No. Some persons who are from a Sri Vaishnava background, and they accept as valid as the Vedas Divya Prabandham. What's Divya Prabandham? It's the realization's 1,000 prayers or verses in Tamil language in glorification of the Supreme Lord. So they have two such, one in Tamil, one in Sanskrit. As far as they're concerned, they're as good as the Vedas. Now we have our writings, for example, of pastimes of the Supreme Lord given to us by our perfected acharyas. For example, the Goswamis wrote wonderful literatures. Try to find the scriptural reference for all the things that they say, and you'll have a hard time finding the scriptural reference for all the things that they say. So how do we regard those things that they say? They're as good. So the criterion is they're in disciplic succession. They're empowered to do what they do. They're not going on a creative writing spree. They're empowered to do. They were instructed by Lord Chaitanya to do what they did, and they expanded his teachings. And the teachings that they expand, they're in line with the Srimad Bhagavatam and other primary Vedic texts. And they make reference again and again and again to the primary Vedic texts. But they're expanding some details that you're not going to find in Vedic texts. So they're 100%. Yeah, one has to be careful because there are lots of people that don't have those kinds of qualifications. But those that have those kinds of qualifications, we have the highest of regard for them. So, Dvivida and how he became bad from a position of being very good and an associate of Lord Ramachandra. So that's the practical. The question has been asked a few times now. At the end of hearing these Krishna's pastimes, what's the practical application for us? What's the takeaway? Or people say it different ways. What's the message that we are to learn? Avoid Vaishnava aparad, like poison. And when Vaishnava aparad is committed, even unintentional, but maybe otherwise, but Vaishnava aparad, it weakens one, and then one becomes susceptible to bad association. And there's abundant bad association, so be careful. And when bad association comes, it's not that the devotional service that's been rendered is lost or destroyed, just covered. That happens. So I heard Sachinandan Maharaj describe something that has to do with Brijvasis. It's nice. I'll tell it quickly. A friend of his from Germany was visiting in downtown Vrindavan, and the devotees who visit are taught, before you get in a rickshaw, you set a price. Because if you don't set a price, when you get off the rickshaw, it's going to cost you the moon. So you set a price. So he did. He set a price with a rickshaw fellow, and the rickshaw fellow brought him to the front of Krishna Balarama Mandir, and then all of a sudden the price shot up. And so the German devotee was irritated and started shouting. And finally, at the end of the shouting match, he placed on the rickshaw driver's seat of his rickshaw the rupees that he agreed on. And the rickshawwala took those rupees and threw them on the ground and left. Later, that devotee left the Hare Krishna movement and just kind of disappeared. Some years later, Sachinandan Swami said, he saw that devotee. He hardly recognized him because he looked like a wreck. And he said, "Are you so-and-so?" "Yes, I'm so-and-so." "What happened?" And the devotee told him the story. I offended the rickshawala in Vrindavan. It's not prominent Prabhu. He's a rickshawala, but he's a resident of Vrindavan. But you offend the residents of Vrindavan, or you offend a Vaishnava, a devotee of the Lord, you can have some problems. So he recovered, but he didn't look the same. Probably didn't feel the same. So, it's serious. The point is, offense is serious business. So guard against offense. Dhamma aparad and Nama aparad and Vaishnava aparad and aparad. Avoid. Be very careful. Huh? Suffer? Huh? Oh, in a rickshaw situation? Well, you don't have to yell at the guy, and because it became very heated. And some people do more than just raise their voice; they raise their hand or whatever. Don't lose your cool with rickshawalas. I mean, you can do different things. You can invite a third party. Can you come here and help us resolve this or something, without just screaming and yelling and ranting and raving and carrying on and insulting. He was irritated by what the rickshawala was doing, and his anger got triggered, and he behaved in an angry, shouting way. And I don't know, what language the German devotee spoke in, but at least the language, the anger language was clear, and the response to the anger language was clear. So don't do that. Find another solution. Or just pay the amount. What's the big deal? X number of rupees for a rickshaw from downtown Vrindavan to Krishna Balaram. Which is more important? But try to make a peaceful solution. Anyone would like to discuss something here? Yes?
Hare Krishna Maharaj. Hare Krishna Maharaj. Thanks for wonderful class, Maharaj. As you mentioned, paying extra money. Yes, I just that everybody cheats us. Means we also cheat. Everybody cheats in the US or whichever country. It doesn't matter. Paying some extra money to the dhammas. That's fine. So my point is, the anarthas what we do or offenses I do, because we are interacting with the devotees, that happens knowing, unknowing,
Yes.
or what I was saying, that we may not be so sensitive to the devotee, which maybe he may be more sensitive. We may not doing also might not giving it that much weightage of that offense what I do. Ultimately, coming to the point, as Prabhuji asked, if happens,
What to do?
what to do?
It's here's a nice explanation given in Madhurya Kadambini. If you're humble, that's the first start, and you recognize Super Soul reminds you, someone else informs you, something, somehow it comes to your attention, I made an offense. Now what do? Somehow it comes to your attention. If it doesn't come to your attention, you're not going to do anything. If it comes to your attention, or even another person thinks they've misunderstood your intention and they've taken it the wrong way. Depends upon the situation, but the recommendation of Vishwanath Chakrabarti Thakur is you go to the person and you offer your apology. Have you ever apologized to somebody for for something that you didn't really do or didn't really say, but they perceive that you did or said something, and you go and apologize. Like, I don't know exactly what happened, how it was perceived by you, this or that, but that you became disturbed. My apology for being such a person that disturbs other persons. You can, I'm not guilty, but I'm apologizing. You don't have to like cover your tracks and just because then it's not taken as a genuine expression. But if it's taken as a genuine expression, even if the person says, "Forget it, man," I reject you, or you're bad, or take a hike, or something. If they don't accept your apology, that's quite okay. If you say the apology with some expectation, that's not very satisfying to you or to them because it'll be perceived as they want something. But if you just say because it's the right thing to do, you genuinely feel sorry that your existence has disturbed another person with some misunderstanding, etc. So that's something. And then Vishwanath says, supposing they don't forgive, then what do? Let some time pass. You go and apologize again and ask for their forgiveness. Supposing a second time they don't, a third time, a number of times, and then you just take shelter of the holy name. This is dealing with the first offense, sadhuninda. That's his description. Then you take shelter of the holy name as your means of purification. But you do the other steps before that. So it really helps to have a conscience. And it also helps to have people who are you're close enough to, they can tell you without offending you, when you did this or said that, this other Prabhu over there, they felt offended. And it's like, what? That's not what happened. How did they construe it that way? Or whatever, if you know that someone has felt offended. Or actually you acknowledge I was in a bad situation. You've had that happen? Yeah. As I'm speaking, I'm thinking of a few of my own. I'll share one. Once upon a time, a god brother named Gyanagamya, who's no longer with us, I heard that he was feeling hurt by me. So I went to him and said, I don't know what happened, but I heard that you're feeling hurt by me. Could you explain? So I can apologize not just like cosmetically, but genuinely for something that I did that hurt you. And he explained, I was visiting, you passed me by in the hallway, you didn't even look at me, you didn't say hello, just kept walking. And then in my mind, I remembered that incident. I was absorbed in some really heavy duty thing, and my mind was not peripheral. I was just absorbed in that heavy duty thing, and I was unresponsive to lots of other stuff. I remember specifically. So I said, this was the situation. And my behavior wasn't okay. My behavior wasn't okay, but that was my situation. So my apology for not being properly respectful and, happy to see you when I saw you. But that was my situation. So understanding my situation, please forgive me. And I'll try to make it up. And he said, oh, really? I had no idea that was going on. I get like that sometimes too. Da 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 da. Please accept my obeisances for holding these feelings for so long. There's others. So that's what you do. And ultimately, there's the holy name. Okay. Something else?
Hare Krishna Maharaj.
I can
So
do it.
on the similar notes, Maharaj, like when we feel like we might have offended a devotee, and then if they are not in our presence, or like we don't have any contact number of them, or like there is no way that we can physically apologize to them. So can I offer my apologies in my heart?
Yeah. But then you also go the extra step or 2 or 3 or 5 to see if there's some way that you can convey that to them through somebody or something. You try. If you can't, you can't, but you try.
Okay.
Take
And
responsibility. This starts with taking responsibility for our speech and actions. I own that responsibility. And if I said something, did something that wasn't right, I want to clear it.
thank you, Maharaj. Another similar one, Maharaj. So if we see, like I see a devotees on any service or on any thing that we do, like they're arguing with conflict of interest, or like
You're a
different opinion.
bystander to a conflict.
Not
You're a
advising, Maharaj.
participant
Like,
in a conflict.
no, Maharaj. Like if one devotee is arguing with the other devotee, if I feel that the devotee is like offending the other devotee, can I
Uh-oh.
apologize on behalf of that devotee?
Not really. You can apologize that you feel the way that you feel. I wasn't responsible, but my it's not exactly apology, but I'm extending my empathy for what you're feeling. But you can't exactly apologize for the other person. It's a relationship. So you have a relationship with the person. You can't apologize on behalf of another person. You can feel empathy on their behalf. Okay? Online something? No, you have something.
What happened to Mainda, the brother of Dvivida? Did he?
We don't
fall
hear
down?
anything about Minda. He just disappears. We don't know.
When we do Vaishnava Aparadh, we know by Krishna's mercy sometimes we realize that and we ask apologies. But in family, as a husband is Vaishnava, kids are Vaishnava, child, and sometimes we need to speak harshly because so for reason
Well, wait a minute. Because why?
because some reason.
Strongly is different than harshly.
So is it that is also Vaishnava Aparadh and I have to suffer for
Of
that?
course.
Or Radhesha.
Of course.
So how I have to? That's because it's similar.
Everything is best based upon relationship, and I'm not a guidance a family counselor. But you need to be clear, and you need to be respectful. You put those two things together, and depending upon the relationship, you should be clear and respectful. And it gets a little delicate when there's close relations because of the principle of familiarity. Because of the principle of familiarity, it's easy to take things for granted and etc. without going into it too much. So therefore, the antidote for that is respect. So you communicate respectfully, clearly, but respectfully. And you lose that respectfulness, and it's a breeding ground for animosity and hurt feelings, and things don't get better, things get worse. So speak clearly, respectfully. Sometimes speaking strongly is required, but don't let that respect drop. Is that all right?
Okay, Maharaj.
Okay.
Maharaj, one more question. Nanda Maharaj and Yashodamaya, they are Vasus, as you mentioned, but they are serving eternal to Lord Krishna in spiritual world also,
Yes.
right? So they are doing both, like Vasus means different planets there, and the Yashodamaya and Nanda Maharaj is serving spiritual world. So their expansion is there also?
Yes. Oh, yes.
Okay.
Are they? We discussed this, but we'll discuss it again. The What to speak of Krishna's Shaktis can expand unlimitedly. Also, for Krishna's purpose, uh, Krishna's his servants, the jivas, can expand unlimitedly. But Krishna can have them expand unlimitedly, not like they can just pop up and do the multiple things. It came up in our China class, which was Wednesday evening. I'll just share. When Krishna left in the morning, left each palace and got on his chariot and went to the Sudharma assembly hall, all 16,108 Krishnas merged into one Krishna and entered the Sudharma assembly. But it's said that along with Krishna, Uddhava and Satyaki were in his chariot also. So the question was, how many Satyakis and Uddhavas were there? You follow the question? No? How many palaces did Krishna have? 16,108. 16,000. And all of those expansions of Krishna got into a chariot and went to the Sudharma assembly and they became one Krishna. Each of those 16,000 plus chariots were accompanied by Satyaki and Uddhava. Question, how many Satyakis and Uddhavas were there? You follow the question? And then the next question was, did they also merge into one? That was the question. One Chinese devotee was asking that question. And the answer is, according to Brihat Bhagavatamrita, Narada Muni confirms that by Krishna's arrangement, we, Narada and others, by the four Kumaras and others, they have multiple expansions simply to assist Krishna's pastimes. They're expansions of him. They're not expansions of themselves. They're expansions of him. Here's another. This is a Giriraj Maharaj question to Srila Prabhupada in Juhu in a morning walk. Prabhupada, when Krishna goes to another universe, Arjun goes with him, yes? Yes, he's eternal associate. So each universe that Krishna enters, how many Arjunas are there? And Prabhupada's answer, this is not verbatim, but Arjuna also expands. As Krishna goes to different, how many? N number of universes, Arjuna is with him always. So the Lord can have his devotees expand. So what to speak of Shakti? Tattva can expand. How many times does Krishna take birth? And how many Nandas and Jasodas are there? As many as there are appearances of Krishna. For purposes of Krishna's pastimes. It has everything to do with the basic principle that Krishna's potencies are unlimited. Inconceivable, achintya, and unlimited. Ananta and inconceivable. How's that? Mind expanding, isn't it? That's our Krishna. He's wonderful. One more. Why not? There's the microphone.
Maharaj, you mentioned that Dvivida, he's taking darshan of Lord Ram, and he's associating the pure devotees, Hanuman and all. But still, he got a pride and he fall down. He did a Vaishnava
Well,
Aparad of
first he
Lakshmi.
did a Vaishnava Aparad.
Vaishnava Aparad.
Then there
So,
was pride. Based upon his pride, he made Vaishnava Aparad.
yeah, but when we serve the Lord, he has to be free from the anarthas, right?
Yeah,
The Vaishnava.
you got it. So get it together, okay? You should get it together. Don't point a finger at him. Yeah, well, we heard, just listen, we heard that this was orchestrated by the Supreme Lord to teach a lesson. What's the lesson? Beware of pride, because pride could lead to offense, could lead to all kinds of bad things. So here's another question for you. How did Grandfather Bhishma take a vow to kill Arjun? What's the rasa of Bhishma Dev? No. Bhishma's rasa, Virya was a secondary rasa. Is principal rasa one of the five? Dasya. Bhishma's. So how can one who has dasya rasa and is a pure devotee and is a Mahajan take a vow to kill Arjun? It's inspired by Krishna. There's no other explanation. Why did he do that? He wanted Krishna to show his quality, his outstanding quality of Bhaktavatsala. He made me break my vow. I'm going to make him break his vow. Chivalry. I'll kill Arjun because I know he won't let me kill Arjun. He'll break his vow before he'll let me harm Arjun. Okay? Okay. And I see two hands, and then I think I'm going to do the 23 skidoo because I have a call that I'm supposed to participate in.
Hare Krishna Maharaj, thank you very much for giving your valuable association. So Maharaj, I have a question on Vaishnava Aparad.
You do?
Yeah. So, of course, it is one of the very big offense that we can do if we do Vaishnava Aparad. So my question is, if we ask any Vaishnava and for advice to solve our problems, and they tell us to do certain things, to do this, and somehow we are not able to follow or we don't follow those instructions, does that come under Vaishnava Aparad?
No.
Okay.
Vaishnava Aparad has everything to do with attitude.
Yeah, because many times what happened, we or especially I listen saying that I want to listen to some same answer which I already have in mind, probably. And when we hear differently, we think maybe this is not right. Should I do it? Should I not do it? And then we don't follow that
We
instructions.
can do that with Guru also. We can do that with our founder Acharya. He gives very, very clear 100, 10, 1 million, and we still don't. Is that aparad? No. There may be, how the mind processes it and filters and stuff. Doesn't mean it's offense. It means, we're not there yet.
Okay.
But then there's a relationship with Prabhupada, and there's a relationship with a family member, and there's a relationship with a friend, and etc. And we should be transparent and honest in those relationships in ways that you just described.
Yeah.
Here's one devotee was telling me in Alachua, they live close enough to the temple, they can go to Mangalarti. They want to go to Mangalarti. So I was visiting with one godbrother who said his wife, tomorrow I'm going to Mangalarti because my wife's going to say, what's your excuse this morning? And I said, really? Your wife talks to you like that? He said, oh, yes. She's my best friend. No, because he understands the best friend relationship, he doesn't take it in a hurtful way. Because of that relationship, she can say it the way that she said it, because, it put a little prod under his seat to get him to go to Mangalarti when he knows he should and wants to. And I mean, I can't speak like that, but somebody can speak like that, and it's quite okay if the based on the relationship. So is it offense if he didn't go to Mangalarti the last few days because his wife is telling him to go to Mangalarti? Is that offense? No. It can be a weakness, or a need for some improvement in sadhana bhakti or something. It's not an offense.
Thank you. Thank you, Maharaj.
You have something? Okay.